I took a night shift at a hospital that closed 9 years ago, and the rulebook had my name in it. My name was not written but printed on a roster page covering the next 12 months, and the page was dated 3 weeks before I ever applied for the job. I want to be careful about how I tell this, because the part everyone wants is the part I care about least. Yes, there is something in that building. I will get to it. But the thing that keeps me awake is a line item on a maintenance budget, and a signature under it, and a renewal date. The posting was ordinary. Overnight site security, decommissioned medical campus, no experience necessary, uniform provided. $22 an hour, which was $4 more than the tire shop paid me, and the tire shop had recently begun charging me for my own shop rags. I applied at 11 at night from my phone. I had an interview the next afternoon that lasted 11 minutes. The man on the phone was named Dale. He asked whether I lived alone. He asked whether my car started reliably in the cold. He did not ask a single question about security work. The building was St. Ambrose General. It closed 9 years ago and it had not been touched since. The windows on the lower floors were painted over from the inside. There were weeds coming up through the seams of the ambulance bay. The letters had been taken off the front of the building, but you could still read the name in the clean brick where the letters had been. Dale met me in the lot at 9:40. He gave me a ring of keys, a radio with a dead battery, a flashlight, and a green 3-ring binder. He told me to check the cameras, walk my rounds on the schedule, follow the binder, and not improvise. He said the only rule that really mattered was that I could not leave before 7 in the morning. Then he got into his car, which had been running the entire time we spoke, and he drove out of the lot faster than a person drives out of a parking lot. The security office was on the 3rd floor. Someone had put a space heater under the desk and a coffee maker on the file cabinet and a small framed picture of a lake on the wall, and all of it was covered in dust. I sat down and I opened the binder, because I was early and I was nervous and there was nothing else to do. The first sections were what you would expect: fire, medical emergency, trespass, chain of custody for found property. It was written the way corporate documents are written, in that flat voice that has been through a lawyer. There was a table of contents. There were laminated tab dividers. Somebody had cared about this binder. Section 4 was called Site-Specific Standing Orders. Rule 1 said that rounds began at 15 minutes past every odd hour, not the even hours, not on the hour itself. 15 past the odd hour, every time, no exceptions, and if you miss one, you do not make it up. Rule 2 said that the lobby has an old pneumatic tube station, and that if a carrier arrives in the receiving basket, you log the time and you log the color of the carrier, and you leave it exactly where it landed. Do not open it. Do not remove it. Do not touch it with the bare hand. Rule 3 said that if the elevator arrives at your floor without being called, do not step into it and do not look at the floor of the car. Stand back and let the doors close by themselves. Rule 4 said that if you hear your name called from a stairwell, you say the word no once, out loud, in a normal speaking voice, and then you walk back to the office. Walk. It said the word walk twice. It said that under no circumstances do you answer a second time. Rule 5 said that if a door handle turns while you are inside a room, you sit down on the floor and you stay seated until it stops. Do not hold the door shut. Do not brace it. It only ever tests a handle, which expects to be locked. Rule 6 said that you may not leave the site between 10 at night and 7 in the morning, and that if you leave early, the schedule leaves with you. Someone had written a note in the margin next to Rule 6, in blue pen, in small tidy handwriting. The note said, "It follows the person, not the building." I thought it was a hazing thing. New guy opens the binder, new guy gets spooked, everybody laughs on Monday. I have since learned that there was no Monday, there was no crew. In 11 years, that post has never had more than one guard on it at a time. My first carrier arrived at 1:17 in the morning. I heard the tube system move somewhere inside the wall, a long, soft thump traveling down through the building, and then the receiving basket in the lobby rattled the way a mailbox rattles. There was a blue plastic carrier sitting in it. It was warm. I did not open it. I logged the time and I logged the color, and when I went to write it in the log, I saw that the log had a printed column at the top of the page, and the column was labeled carrier color, and there were 400 entries above mine in 6 different handwritings. That is the detail that got me, not the tube. The column. Somebody made that form. Somebody sat at a computer and decided this happens often enough that we should have a place to write it down. At 3:40 in the morning, I heard my name from the second-floor stairwell. It was Dale's voice, exactly, down to the way he clips the end of a word. I said no, once, in a normal speaking voice, the way the binder told me to, and I felt like a lunatic saying it, and I walked back toward the office. Behind me, from the same stairwell, my own voice said my name. I did not answer. I got to the office. I shut the door. I sat down in the chair, and I did not move for a long time, and then, because I am the kind of person who reads the whole document, I went back to the binder and I checked the back pocket. There were roster pages in the back pocket, 12 years of them. Names and dates and initials, each guard's block of months, one guard at a time, the way a calendar looks when only one person is ever on it. There was a laminated card behind the rosters with a state seal on it, and the card used the phrase post-closure monitoring, and the phrase continuous occupancy, and the sentence coverage shall not lapse. And there was a roster page for the next 12 months with my name typed on it. Typed, formatted. Dated 3 weeks before I applied for a job I found by accident at 11 at night on my phone. Then I went back through the logbook to the last entry written by the guard before me. His last line was written at 4 in the morning, 14 months ago, and all it said was, I answered twice. That was the night I understood what I actually was. I was not being protected by those rules. I was the thing the rules were operating. There is something in that building that runs on a schedule, and a schedule needs somebody to keep it, and a person in a chair at 15 past the odd hour is not a security guard. A person in a chair at 15 past the odd hour is a load-bearing wall. I stayed until 7 because Rule 6. Dale came in at 6:58. The first thing he did was not ask me how the night went. The first thing he did was pick up the logbook and check the carrier column. I worked 11 more shifts. I want to be honest about that. I did not walk out like a person in a story walks out. I had rent, and I had a car payment, and I told myself I would understand it better with more data, which is what a coward says when he wants to be paid on Friday. But I photographed the binder. 41 pages, on my phone, in the office chair, at 3 in the morning, with the flash off. The rest of this is paperwork. I have made peace with the fact that the paperwork is the horror. I emailed our human resources contact and asked who wrote the standing orders. I got a reply in 2 days that said the standing orders were site-specific and proprietary and were not to be discussed outside the post. That same email deducted $40 from my check for the uniform. I asked Dale in the parking lot why my name was printed on a roster before I applied. He said scheduling is done well in advance. I asked how far in advance. He said as far in advance as it needs to be, and he got into his running car. I sent the photographs to the state health department. I got a letter back with a case number and a paragraph explaining that they do not have jurisdiction over private security contracts. So I filed a public records request with the county, and it took 62 days, and it cost me $11 in copy fees, and it worked. There is an agreement on file between the county, a holding company with a post office box for an address, and a security contractor. It is called a post-closure monitoring agreement. It has a schedule of costs. And on the second page, in a table, between line items for roof inspection and mechanical systems, there is a line item that reads, Continuous overnight human occupancy, 365 nights, $161,000 annually. Somebody typed that. Somebody priced it. Somebody has renewed it every year for 11 years, and it has never once lapsed. I read that line in the parking lot of the county records office, sitting in my car with the door open and my feet on the asphalt, and I want to tell you that I was frightened. But what I actually felt was something much smaller and much worse. I felt embarrassed. Because I had been thinking of myself as a man who had discovered a monster, and I was, in fact, a man who had been purchased. I found the sister of the guard whose last entry was, I answered twice. She had been told he abandoned his post. His car sat in that lot for 9 days before anyone called her. She still has his last message, sent at 4:11 in the morning, and she read it to me over the phone in a very steady voice, and it said, "Do not pick up if I call you, it has my voice now." A woman who had been a nursing supervisor at St. Ambrose in its last 2 years met me at a diner and talked for 3 hours. She told me the 4th floor was closed to patients long before the hospital closed. She told me nobody was ever scheduled alone at night in the final year, and that this was not written anywhere, it was just how the schedule got made. She told me there was a thing everyone did in the stairwells and nobody ever said out loud. Then she folded her napkin and she said, "We all knew, and we all decided it was a personality flaw to say so." There was a county meeting. I was on the agenda for 12 minutes. A lawyer for the holding company used the phrase legacy site protocol 4 times and never once used a noun for what the protocol is about. A man from the county said the occupancy requirement was an insurance condition, and he said it in the tone of a man reading a weather report. Afterward, in the hallway, a woman from the state licensing board asked me for a copy of my photographs, and she looked at the standing orders page for about 10 seconds, and she said, quietly, "You are not the first person to bring me that binder." The contractor lost its license 8 months later. Not for the building. For paperwork. Unlicensed post, falsified guard cards, a training log that had been photocopied from the same blank page for 6 years. 2 people resigned. Dale is a supervisor at a different company now, and he has never spoken to me again. The contract went out to a new vendor in 5 weeks. The line item was renewed. I have the new agreement. It is the same table, the same 365 nights, a slightly higher number. 3 former guards found me. One of them worked the post in his 40s and never told his wife what he did there for a year. One of them told me he answered twice and nothing happened to him, and he has not slept through a night since, and he would not say another word about it. And one of them sent me a photograph of his binder from 6 years ago, and it is the same binder, the same 6 rules in the same flat lawyer voice, except that his had a 7th rule that mine did not have. Rule 7 said, "Do not read the rosters." I have thought about that for a long time. Either somebody removed Rule 7 from my binder by accident, or somebody removed it on purpose, and I do not know which of those is worse, and I have stopped trying to decide. Somebody found a thing that cannot be killed and cannot be moved, and instead of telling anyone, they found out what it needed, and they wrote the requirements down, and they formatted them, and they put them behind a laminated tab, and they got a purchase order. I used to think the horror of that place was that something in it is alive. It is not. The horror is that it works, and they made it a cost of doing business. Nothing that works ever gets fixed. That is the whole rule, and it is not written in any binder. There is a man in that chair tonight. He is 22 years old or he is 58, and he needed the money, and at 15 past the odd hour he will get up and walk his rounds. When the tube drops, he will write down the color. When his name comes up the stairwell, he will say no, once, out loud, in a normal speaking voice, the way the binder tells him to. And the schedule will hold, and the building will stay quiet, and on the 1st of the month, the invoice will clear.